They faked El Mencho's death, and here's who ordered it. On March 2nd, 2026, a gold casket was lowered into a plane plot in Zapopan, Mexico, while helicopters circled overhead and mourners covered their faces. The Attorney General's office refused to confirm even the burial location. The casket never opened in public. The DNA results confirming the body's identity were never fully released. And the most wanted criminal in Mexico, a man who personally orchestrated a fake death for his own son-in-law and got away with it for years, was declared dead based on documentation that no independent forensic body has fully verified. This breakdown is not going to tell you El Mencho is alive. Nobody can say that. What it is going to do is walk through the two theories that analysts, investigators, and people who study this world for a living have been quietly discussing since February 22nd, starting with the documented facts that make those theories worth taking seriously, and ending with the question that the gold casket left completely unanswered. Because in the history of Mexican cartels, the official story and the true story have often been very different things, and the people with the most to gain from El Mencho being dead are not necessarily the people you'd expect. What we know for certain and what we don't. Before the theories, the facts. On February 22nd, 2026, Mexican Army Special Forces raided a compound called Cabanas La Loma in the municipality of Tapalpa, Jalisco. El Mencho was there. A firefight broke out. According to official accounts, he was wounded and transported by helicopter for medical treatment. Authorities confirmed he died before reaching the hospital. The death certificate listed thoracic, abdominal, and lower extremity trauma caused by gunshot wounds. The official time of death was 10:30 a.m. The body was taken to Mexico City. An autopsy was performed. 6 days later, the Attorney General's office released a brief statement confirming the body had been handed over to unidentified family members. Genetic testing confirmed a biological relationship between the person claiming the body and the deceased. The body was transported to Guadalajara. A funeral took place. A gold casket was buried. The end. Here is what was not confirmed publicly. The full forensic chain of identity verification was never released. The family members who claimed the body were not named. The burial location was initially withheld for what the government called security reasons. The casket was never opened in front of an independent witness, a journalist, or a camera. The genetic testing confirmed a blood relationship. It did not, in any public statement, confirm that the body in that casket was specifically and positively Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. Now add this. El Mencho's son-in-law, Christian Fernando Gutierrez Ochoa, faked his own death. El Mencho personally told his own associates he had killed the man. He had not. Gutierrez Ochoa was living in California with El Mencho's daughter. He was arrested in November 2024. In June 2025, he pled guilty in U.S. federal court and confirmed the entire account. This is not speculation. It is part of a federal court record. The man in that gold casket came from a family that had pulled off a fake death within the last 2 years, and the person who engineered it was El Mencho himself. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. None of that proves anything, but it sets the table for what comes next. Theory 1. The Mexican government ordered it. This is the theory that serious analysts have been most cautious about saying out loud. So let's say it clearly, and then lay out exactly why it is not as absurd as it sounds. By the time El Mencho was killed, the Mexican government was operating under the most intense U.S. pressure it had faced in decades. President Donald Trump had spent over a year threatening to send American military forces into Mexican territory to deal with the cartels directly. He had designated CYNG a foreign terrorist organization in February 2025. He had imposed tariffs on Mexican imports and tied further economic consequences to Mexico's willingness to take action against drug trafficking organizations. Multiple U.S. officials had publicly stated that if Mexico would not act, Washington would consider acting for them. Eduardo Guerrero, director of security consultancy Lantia Consultores, stated directly that the operation against El Mencho was related to U.S. pressure for more powerful strikes against organized crime. Vanda Felbob Brown, a non-state armed groups expert at the Brookings Institution, described the raid as a very important deliverable to the U.S. to prevent or deflect U.S. unilateral military actions in Mexico. Reuters correspondent Laura Gottesdiener, covering Mexico for the outlet that won the 2025 Pulitzer Prize for Investigative Reporting, said there was a real sense in Mexico and beyond that governments need to show the U.S. that they are willing and able to take military action on their own, lest Washington sends special forces into the country. The political benefit to President Claudia Sheinbaum was enormous and immediate. America's Quarterly described the operation as giving Sheinbaum valuable breathing room in Washington at a particularly delicate moment, strengthening her standing with Republican lawmakers who had repeatedly framed Mexican cartels as responsible for the U.S. fentanyl crisis. The White House praised the operation immediately. Even after all of that, President Trump posted on social media the following day demanding Mexico do more, which tells you how high the bar had become and how much Sheinbaum needed a headline-level win. Now here is where the theory gets specific. What if Sheinbaum's government, under relentless pressure from Washington, needed to show the U.S. a result, but also understood that actually killing El Mencho would trigger exactly what happened? More than 70 dead, 20 states in chaos, highways blocked, businesses burning, the World Cup host city Guadalajara in open violence. That outcome was a disaster domestically. It was manageable diplomatically, and President Trump praised it, but it was catastrophic for Mexican civilians and for Sheinbaum standing at home. The question analysts were sitting with is this: was there a version of this where a deal was quietly struck, a staged operation, a confirmed death that gave the U.S. its trophy, and an exit for El Mencho that removed the problem without the full consequences of actually eliminating the most powerful cartel leader in the country? The mechanism for such a thing would not be unprecedented in Mexican history. The Mexican government has been documented repeatedly to have deep corruption ties with cartel organizations at every level of law enforcement and politics. In February 2025, Mexican authorities arrested the mayor of Tequila, Jalisco, along with 3 other officials, for an extortion scheme run in direct collusion with CJNG. A former Tabasco State Security Secretary was arrested for leading a CJNG cell. A federal magistrate judge was dismissed in 2023 for ties to the cartel. This is not isolated. The Council on Foreign Relations notes that cartels routinely pay off judges, police, and politicians, while the 2024 Mexican election was the most violent in 6 years, with more than 30 candidates killed. Mexico's federal law enforcement has been reorganized at least 5 times since 1982, each time to address corruption so deep that the previous structure had to be scrapped entirely. The idea that senior government figures could have access to and communication with CJNG's leadership is not a conspiracy theory. It is the documented baseline of how the Mexican state and organized crime have coexisted for decades. What the government theory requires you to accept is that a staged death was operationally possible, politically motivated, and potentially the least catastrophic option on a table full of bad choices. The documentation gaps, no public forensic release, unnamed family members, a sealed casket, a burial location initially withheld, would all need to be explained away if this theory is false. Investigators have noted that these gaps are much harder to explain away than they should be for a death of this magnitude. The counter-argument is real, and it is significant. Over 70 people died in the retaliatory violence. The CJNG burned 20 states. The U.S. State Department issued shelter-in-place advisories for American citizens in Mexico. If this was staged, the cartel absorbed enormous losses, caused massive damage to its own operational infrastructure, and created international chaos, all to protect one man. That is a steep price for a fake funeral. But then again, for El Mencho, some would argue it was not steep enough. Theory 2. CJNG faked it to protect him. This theory puts the intelligence and the motive on the other side of the table. Not the government arranging a disappearance, but the cartel itself. Start with what CJNG had to work with. Mexican officials estimated the cartel's total assets at $50 billion. Former DEA agents estimated El Mencho's personal fortune at between $500 million and $1 billion, structured across hotels, real estate, shell companies, cryptocurrency, and legitimate businesses, described by one former agent as similar to a multinational investor's portfolio. The cartel had 15,000 to 20,000 members, according to U.S. government figures, a presence in 21 of Mexico's 32 states, and operations across 6 continents. An organization of that size and wealth has resources that most governments do not. It has lawyers, accountants, intelligence networks, and deeply embedded government contacts at multiple levels of the Mexican state. It has demonstrated through the El Gaucho fake death, through El Mencho building a private hospital in a remote village, and through years of evading one of the most heavily resourced manhunts in Mexican history, an extraordinary capacity to manage complex operations quietly. The cartel theory goes like this. By February 2026, El Mencho was a man the entire world was hunting. He had late-stage kidney disease that had already dropped his kidney function below 15% of normal capacity. He needed daily dialysis. He could not move constantly. He could not run. The compound at Tapalpa had already been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department in 2017 for ties to CJNG. The location was known, at least in government circles, for almost a decade. And El Mencho kept going back there because his medical condition gave him no choice. What the CJNG theory requires is this: that the cartel, seeing the walls closing in, staged a firefight or arranged a body, used the documented corruption within the Mexican military and government to ensure the identification process produced the right result, and then used the retaliatory violence, which served the cartel's own purposes of showing strength during a leadership transition, to sell the story. The chaos after his death was real. Whether it was grief or theater or both is the question that cannot currently be answered. The precedent for this kind of operation within CJNG's history exists. Nazario Moreno Gonzalez, leader of the Knights Templar, was officially declared dead in December 2010. No body was publicly identified. His cartel survived. He survived. He was killed for real, or at least killed again, in March 2014. 4 years of a confirmed, official, documented death that proved not to be true. Heriberto Lascano, leader of the Zetas, was killed in October 2012. His body was taken to a funeral home. Armed men arrived that night and took the corpse. It was never seen again. There has been no confirmed sighting, alive or dead, since 2012. His organization had the resources and the connections to reach into a funeral home and walk out with the body. CJNG, with significantly more money and significantly deeper institutional penetration would have the same capability and more. The cartel theory also explains one detail that the government theory does not handle as cleanly. The DNA testing confirmed a biological relationship between the person claiming the body and the body itself. If CJNG arranged the substitution, they would need a body from within the family, or from someone genetically close enough to pass. The cartel has demonstrated, through the El Gaucho operation, an ability to manage identity and documentation across international borders. Managing a DNA test through corrupted officials in a system where judges and police have already been documented on the payroll of JNG is a different order of difficulty, but not an impossible one, given the documented corruption baseline. What makes this theory harder to accept is the same thing that makes it compelling. The retaliatory violence was genuinely enormous. More than 70 people died. 20 states went into chaos. If El Mencho was alive and watching, his organization just burned a significant portion of its own operational capacity in his name. The cartel set fire to businesses in Guadalajara, a city it had spent years cultivating and controlling. That is an expensive performance, but it is also the kind of performance that tells every rival organization, every faction within CJNG, and every government on both sides of the border that the cartel is not broken, that the king may be gone, but the kingdom is very much still standing. Whether that message was worth the cost depends on what El Mencho's continued existence was worth to the organization he built. Both theories share the same foundational problem. They require things that no public document has yet disproved. The death certificate exists. The DNA testing happened. The official accounts of the operation are detailed and consistent. These are real. They are documented. They are not fabricated. But in a country where a federal magistrate judge was dismissed for CJNG ties, where the mayor of Tequila was arrested for running an extortion scheme with the cartel, where El Mencho spent years publicly insisting his son-in-law was dead when he was living in California. In that country, the existence of official documentation has historically not been the end of the question. It has sometimes been the beginning of one. The death certificate itself includes a clause specifying that the burial was conducted in a manner that permits additional forensic testing if needed. That clause exists in Mexican law for exactly these situations. The ground in Zapopan can be opened. Independent forensic verification remains possible. It has not happened. What is certain is this: the political benefit of El Mencho's death to both the Mexican government and to the Trump administration looking for a headline win was enormous and immediate. The organizational benefit to CJNG of a confirmed death, eliminating the $15 million bounty, removing the relentless international hunt, allowing the organization to reconstitute under new leadership while its founder potentially operates from somewhere else, was also real, if you accept the cartel theory. Two sets of people had reasons to want that casket closed and that question unanswered. They just may not be the same people. A gold casket, a sealed lid, a burial location the government initially refused to confirm. DNA results that confirmed a blood connection, but whose full forensic chain was never made public. The ground in Zapopan has the answer. Nobody has gone back to check. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.